Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In all sacrificial ceremonies, although sometimes a demigod is worshipped, the Supreme Lord Personality of Godhead is worshipped because He is the supersoul of everyone and exists both inside and outside, like the air. Thus, it is He only who awards all welfare to the worshipper. Purport. It is even sometimes seen that demigods like Indra, Chandra, are worshipped and offered sacrificial awards. Yet, the rewards of all such sacrifices are awarded to the worshipper by the Supreme Lord. It is the Lord only who can offer all welfare to the worshipper. The demigods, although worshipped, cannot do anything without the sanction of the Lord, because the Lord is the supersoul of everyone, both moving and non-moving. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 23, the Lord Himself confirms this in the following sloka. Yapayanya divala bhakta yajanti sradhayana nitaha tepi mamiva kuntiya yajanti aviti purvakam. And then it says, whatever man may sacrifice to other gods, O son of Kunti, it is really meant for me alone, but it is offered without true understanding. The fact is that the Supreme Lord is the one without second. There is no God other than the Lord Himself. Thus, the Supreme Lord is eternally transcendental to the material creation. But there are many who worship the demigods like Sun and the Moon and Indra, who are only material representatives of the Supreme Lord. These demigods are indirect qualitative representations of the Supreme Lord. A learned scholar or devotee, however, knows who is also, a learned scholar or a devotee, however, knows who is who. Therefore, he directly worships the Supreme Lord and is not diverted by the material qualitative representations. Those who are not so learned worship such qualitative material representations, but their worship is unceremonious because it is irregular. Om Adhyana Timrandasya Jananjana Salakaya Chakshon Milatam Yena Tasmei Shri Gurave Namaha Vancha Kopachubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanaveo Vaishnavabheo Namo Namaha. So, there's some interesting words used here. Where Prabhupada is like doing an analysis and his definitions here. He says, it seems that the demigods like Indra, Chandra are worshipped and offered sacrificial awards, yet the rewards of all such sacrifices are awarded to the worshipper by the Supreme Lord. It is the Lord only who can offer to the worshipper. The demigods, although worshipped, cannot do anything without the sanction of the Lord, because the super soul of everyone he is the super soul of everyone, both moving and non-moving. So that's interesting. What he's doing, this super soul, he's looking at our desire, and it's this respect that causes us to worship these qualitative, you could say representative, as Prabhupada calls them. Qualitative, it means that by quality, actually, they're the same as us. They're parts and parcels of the Lord. They're not the Supreme Lord, but they're his representatives. By quality, they are jivas too, but they're on a higher platform, demigods. That they are his qualitative representatives. They're like, there's a prime minister, but he has his ministers, and they look after different departments. And so here, it's like a Bhagavad Gita lesson, really. This is straight out the Bhagavad Gita. And it's telling us that actually it's not correct, it's incorrect to worship these things, but through these demigods, he can award the person their desire. You see, it's a very interesting thing, this desire, because if we don't get what we want, then we doubt Scripture. Scripture's still there for demigod worship. It's still on the fruitive mentality. Though it's the Supreme Lord is the one that sanctions. But he doesn't want his, you could say, fruitive desires, or the people who have those fruitive desires to be unhappy. He wants them to be happy. So this is very interesting. He wants our happiness of all living beings. Now I'll give you an example. If you put a demon in a temple and he'd look at all the people and think they're crazy, and he'd start to feel really uncomfortable. You know, it's the wrong place for him. A demon can't handle this. You know, where are all these people down sitting listening to these strange books? What are they asking for? You know, where are they coming from? They must be crazy. And so, Krishna doesn't let those demons or the demoniac mentality or fruitive mentality into Krishna Loka. They'd be unhappy there. They wouldn't be getting what they wanted. They would be having to be told what to do. I mean, it's service, you know, and I'm serving me. This is not the place I want to be. It's a very interesting aspect, isn't it? So Krishna wants everybody to be happy wherever they are. So he fulfills their desires. So we've got to be careful what our underlying desires are. At first, we're conditioned by the modes of material nature. It's a strange thing. We're like, you could say, I won't say demons, but we're innocent. You know, we have no knowledge. You know, you can preach to somebody who's innocent and has no knowledge, because maybe they'll take it in. But a demon by nature, he can't handle this. He doesn't want this. You know, he'll be rude to you. He may even insult you. And so there are various prescribed rules that when we go out to preach, we should know that how to preach. and who we're preaching to. And there's some people we won't get involved with. They'll abuse you. And so what we don't do, we don't go say, oh, please excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Take a humble position. Don't argue. Or those of other religions, denominations, what they follow, they'll say, you're a demon yourself. I've had that happen to me. And I said, yeah, please excuse me. I just move on now. Thank you for your opinion, but I best maybe we should talk about other things. And then you got a choice. If the intelligence is there, you could say that, how do you worship then? And this immediately engages them. Because they'll want to preach to you. Isn't it? That's the first thing. And then you ask them, do you follow regulative principles? Oh, what are they? They ask you a question back. Immediately you're engaging them. They will ask you maybe, what are you doing? Without knowing it. It's like if the intelligence is there. I can remember at times it certainly wasn't. But there was also a time when somebody said, Krishna's just a killer. And he was citing the battle of Kurukshetra. He was telling them all to kill and massacre. And he was very hostile. But he said Krishna. So, what do? You let it be. So maybe we have a misunderstanding here. You can say like that. You don't say, oh no, you're wrong. But we have a misunderstanding. It's not pointing the finger at them, and it may even be pointing the finger at me. So there's some sort of compromise. So here, now, we have a situation where somehow we've gone to the supreme sacrifice, that there should be no sacrifice other than the supreme sacrifice in this kingdom. And now it's gone to maybe there is fruitive activities. So why would this be? Why is the mood changed now to going to demigod worship and or fruitive mentality? It's worth noting that somehow or other, the only thing I can understand from this, that somehow or other, that the Lord in this Bhagavatam is catering for all natures. And they'll see this verse, and they may identify with it. They may see, oh yeah, so there is demigod worship, so even in this age of Kali, and so maybe I'm okay. There's a lot of people in the congregation, they worship Lord Shiva or have worshipped Lord Shiva previously, and maybe still worshipping in that way. So we should know that they're on the path, they're listening to Krishna consciousness, but it's not that we're decrying their worship. It is sanctioned in the Vedas. Vedas come from Krishna. But he's bringing us all into one place. He's trying to bring us all into one place, gradually. A place of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the one who awards all sacrifices. Most sacrifice will say Om, before they start, isn't it? So they're addressing the Supreme Lord as the permitter of the sacrifice. That's first thing. Then they worship their demigod. Om Shivanaya or whatever. So first, through the Supreme Lord, they worship that representative. So Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's engaging everybody in such a way. But here it says that they're his qualitative representative. Qualities are the modes of the material nature. You know, they each, all the demigods, have had their particular moments when they've, they themselves have forgotten themselves and thought they're the most powerful. Shri Shri Adako Kunanda Kishai, Shri Shri Gornitai Kishai, Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Kishai. So, if I may, I'll just refer to my notes. It's a very nice verses in the Bhagavad Gita, which I just wanted to go to. I'll read the English translations, and it's Bhagavad Gita 7:21, 22. And in fact, it's such a similarity to what's coming here. Krishna says in 7:20, he says, those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto the demigods and follow particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. So he says, I am in everyone's heart in 21. As the supersoul, as soon as one desires to worship some demigod, I make his faith steady, so that he can devote himself to that particular deity. So Krishna's assisting that worshipper, because he knows what makes him happy. Krishna gives them at least some faith in the Vedas. They're following the Vedas and they're worshipping the deities, and from this sacrifice they will get the result, so they don't decry the Vedas. So that's there. Endowed with such faith, he endeavors to worship a particular demigod and obtains his desires, but in actuality these benefits are bestowed by me alone, Krishna says. Same. Saying the same. I'm bestowing them. They're just sort of like representatives. Men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet. It says then, unintelligent men who do not know me perfectly think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was impersonal before, and have now assumed a personality due to their small knowledge. They do not know my higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme. Now these Yanis, they're worshipping the impersonal nature. They're full of knowledge. They're full of scripture. You know, they can even devote, in debate, they can turn the scriptures on their head. But what you have to be careful that we don't promote from them like digging a hole in for their own grave. We detach ourselves from the engaging with the impersonalists, because they may even be able to defeat you on scriptural arguments, but we don't get into that. We have this understanding that there's some things that we don't want to let them dig their grave deeper. In other words, by engaging in arguments or, that it makes their next life more difficult. So, and I can remember Prabhupada, he was speaking to somebody like a Mayavadi, and he says, those people who worship the impersonal Brahman, he was speaking to a Mayavadi actually, and he said to them, but those who worship the impersonal Brahman are less intelligent. And the person, he heard Prabhupada say, but he was an impersonalist. He didn't quite like it. But he then said, look, I'm not saying, Krishna's saying. So no need, we needn't argue. I'm not saying, I'm just telling you what Krishna's saying. And so Prabhupada, he was the perfect representative. That he says, it's Krishna who's saying you're less intelligent. So you don't need to argue with me. I'm just repeating what Krishna says. You're less intelligent. And of course then the person just laughed. This is Prabhupada. He engaged him in such a way, he saw the contradiction in a humorous sense. I'm not saying, Krishna's saying you're less intelligent. So we have here a person who can do that. But I don't think we could engage the Mayavadis in such a way. We don't have that Shakti, that way to engage them in such a way that they'll even laugh at themselves, that they'll laugh at the situation. So this is a very wonderful thing. And so we see here in the verse today that this verse, which is so similar to the Bhagavad Gita, it's a continuing a theme in the Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, he says the goal where you go is the place, if you worship these demigods, is the place of the demigods. But you come back. It's temporary. You won't get eternal happiness. So gradually, so there's this strange mention about fruitive, the change of, or the acceptance of somehow that people do worship the demigods. He's saying, but you got to know that Krishna's the one who's given permission. Give them knowledge. Give them what they want, if they want materialism, but give them knowledge. It's really Krishna who's giving you that. He's their boss. He's telling you that this is your understanding of this verse. And so we should know that the personality of Kali, that in the sacrificial ceremonies, there's some time for worship of the is worshipped. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is worshipped because he's the super soul of everyone and exists both inside and outside like air. It means he sees everything that's happening. Don't you worry that actually Krishna's in control, so he's not going to be he's not chastising them. He says, okay, you can have what you want. It's okay. But it must be according to the rules of the Shastra. Follow Shastra. So it is he, the final crowning glory is then he whacks him on the head and says, but he only is the one that awards your welfare. He says, look, you've got to know where your money's coming from. You know, you got to know where everything's coming from. So in a way, you know, why not worship Krishna directly? You know, these they are just his servants, so they have to do what they say. So whatever it says here in the purport, whatever a man may sacrifice to other demigods, O son of Kunti, is really meant for me alone, but is offered without understanding. That's all. They're less intelligent. And so, but less intelligent means they're sort of innocent. That if they're given intelligence, if they're given knowledge, then they become intelligent. So that's the path that somehow this treads, as I come to understand it. I'm reading through. So somehow they're just going through the ministers, and the Prime Minister will say, okay, we'll give to these people, have so much. And so he sanctions. So are there any questions and comments now? There's 5 minutes that you can ask. Yes, certainly. Matati. Is there a microphone?
Yes.
Yeah. Over there.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for your class. I just wanted to ask, in the purport at the end it is said that this worship of the demigods is unceremonious because it is irregular. So does it refer to this irregular? So it means it's improper because it's irregular. So does it mean that it's irregular because they just do it when they need, when they want to get something? Maybe if you could explain more.
Yeah, it could be both. That's an interesting, and it's a good question. Irregular, unceremonious. It's whimsical. It is. It's a thing to do with the modes of material nature. You worship in the goodness, passion, and ignorance, and the things you desire, you'll be given. You know, in goodness, generally, it has a religious principle. It's based on the Vedas. But in passion, it's not all. They may worship according to the Vedas, but it's more totally selfish. Mode of goodness considers there may be a spiritual aspect. Mode of passion, really, it's just pure selfishness, actually. They want something, no matter what. And Krishna will give them what they want. So, and then I can get on in the world, and I can be great. It plants them in their position that they're the controller still, whether they worship that way or not. Unceremonious. Some are unceremonious, you know. There's ones, you know, when Moses went up into the hills to get the 10 Commandments. While he was away, they started worshipping the idols, things that they wanted to worship. You know, they were really naughty while he was away. He was sort of guiding them under the guidance of God. But while he was away, they got up to their naughty, unceremonious tricks. They created their own little religions while he was away up on the mountain, receiving these commandments. And so, and it's a bit like that, really, you could say. It's unceremonious. Let's see. Yeah, unceremonious. And they worship irregular. Well, if they feel like it, you know, that's where we have to be careful. To be regular and steady is a sattvic quality. And so we have to, Krishna is in your heart. He makes our faith steady according to a mood that we're determined to serve him. So that's worth knowing. So if there's some determination, even though there's mistakes, still Krishna will carry what we lack. This is the wonderful thing. Because he's my devotee. He's worshipping me. And he says, with love, I give understanding by which he comes to me. Tesham satata yuktanam pajatam pratipur. So we got to understand it's this inner determination to worship Krishna is a very important thing. It's sincerity, and it's not whimsical. That we're steady. We come on the Sattvic platform. We do what we can do according to our nature to keep our faith steady, and regulation brings steadiness. It brings a peaceful state of mind, actually, because once you're convinced, in Bhagavad Gita chapter 9 it says those who don't have the faith, I think it's 9, excuse me, oh yeah, sorry, it's at the beginning. Those who are not faithful in this devotional service cannot attain me, O conqueror of enemies. Therefore, they return to the path of repeated birth and death in the material world. So it's according to your faith. But if this is the thing. To get faith, we have to be with each other in a class. To hear questions and answers. I remember in Christian church, there was a man, he was preaching, but there was no questions and answers. It was like it was a one-way traffic, and they might speak to the minister after. Those who did want to inquire, but there was no forum for it in a Christian church. There's no questions and answers as such, except maybe on a personal level with the pastor or the vicar or whatever he was at that thing. So this was the first thing that hit me when I came to Krishna consciousness. This forum that there is, questions and answers. What does it do? What to do? You tell me when we have questions and answers. What does it do for you? Anybody like to say? Yeah. Sorry. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it gives clarity. Anything that's said that I have doubts in,
Yes.
that's limiting my surrender, I can kind of question that so I can get some understanding to move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So clears our doubts, and that's the spiritual master's job, isn't it? This is Prabhupada's job. He's clearing our doubts. Our association with each other is clearing our doubts. Our doubts, they are traitors. They cause us to lose that good we may achieve by trying. They're traitors. They betray us. Our doubts. It's the mind. Oh, this doesn't sound right. This disagrees. No, clarify them. That's the job of the disciple. The job of the spiritual master is to answer doubts. That's his position. Or your Shiksha Guru, if you've not got a spiritual master at the moment. You're the person that you regard as giving you help personally. That's the person you go to. You don't go to everyone, because then you'll get everybody's opinion. That's not very good. It has to be that person that you can be convinced that their answer is that you have faith in what they say, and that you'll follow it. That's the important thing. Yeah. Okay.
I was meditating on this, of the positions of the demigods. Because we understand that the demigods are, as you mentioned, they're like Krishna's ministers, and Krishna is the supreme, and these are his ministers. So they can only be his ministers if they understand the supremacy of the Lord.
Yeah.
Now, how is it that they accept worship? Because if like when we serve like the spiritual master, the pure devotee, he's passing it on to Krishna. So how is it that these demigods will accept worship to themselves, knowing well that the supreme is Krishna? And if not, then why would if they do that, then that means they're going against the understanding that Krishna is the supreme, and so they have an opportunity to fall. So what's their position?
It's because they understand that Krishna is the supreme, and that it's his, that he's the sanctioner. He'll tell them. He's the super soul. Do you remember? He's in the heart of the demigod. He says, give it to him. He tells that demigod, give them what they want. Go on. I don't want my souls, my parts and parcels to be unhappy. Let them be happy. Give them what they want. But when you get knowledge, you find out that Krishna's really given you that. And you think, whew. So Krishna is the one that maybe is the supreme. So why am I worshipping the demigods? He can satisfy, because by worship of Krishna, all the demigods are satisfied, because they're happy with that. They're his little servants, and then he'll detail them, help him in his devotional service, make sure he's got the strength, make sure he can move his eyelids, all this sort of thing. He'll make sure all your actions and senses are, all these demigods, because they're in control of the senses, they're acting for Krishna's sake. And he'll tell them to give him the senses to which to worship me. Whether it be mind and the intelligence, or the body. He'll tell the demigods, help his facility in what he's deity worship or whatever. Help him. So Krishna is because he sees the heart of the person on the altar. And the demigods are then being told by Krishna, assist him. Give him the movements necessary to worship the Krishna on the altar. So it's he's all pervading like the air. So he knows what the person worshipping on the altar is doing, and he gets the demigods to activate that person in such a way that his worship is fulfilled. But when his worship is fulfilled, then the person who's doing the worship should, after a while, cannot do without this service. If it's taken from him, then he'll say, because of sickness or whatever, for whatever reason, oh my God, you still wake up at the same time, but you just don't feel well enough. It's stopping you do your service. And so you start to know your attachment then for your service. Directly, if you take away a person's service, it's like being lost. It's like a mother. When the children all leave home, she loses her service. She becomes unhappy. That's the source of her unhappiness. She's got nobody to serve anymore. So she becomes unhappy. Service brings love. So this is why we see in the Vedic culture, families are close because they're supportive, but they should be supportive of each other in their worship of Krishna. That's where that we should understand it. In the ashram the Grihastha ashram, that actually they're supporting each other to go to Krishna. So, and that's their loving relationship. Krishna's the one, he's getting everybody together as a family to worship Krishna. Do kirtan together. This sort of thing. So, it's all thing. And without that kirtan, it's like these people, they come for darshan. They miss this place like anything. So for just a little glimmer that they get, they're allowed, permitted, they're satisfied. Because under the conditions, it's Krishna. Somehow they can't fight it. So they take what they can get. So it's precious. And the same we should be. Take what we can get. It's precious. It's all divine permission. Is there anybody else? Any comments, questions? Because it's now 20 to 9. Is it any other service? Nothing biting your tongue or... Okay. All right. Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Srila Brahmavan ki. Nitai Go Premanande.